Welcome to God Friday Discussions. As we embark on this journey together, it's important to acknowledge the diversity of thoughts, beliefs, and experiences that each of us brings to the table. Our discussions are rooted in a spirit of exploration, learning, and mutual respect. The views expressed are those of the individual participant and are presented for the purpose of open dialogue and personal reflection. Please note, we recognize and honor the freedom of personal belief. This platform does not advocate for any singular viewpoint as the absolute authority on spiritual matters. Our discussions are intended as a safe space for sharing and growth. We encourage you to approach each session with an open heart and mind, but also respect your personal boundaries. If at any point you find the content not to your liking or comfort, you are free to disengage as you see fit. While we seek to provide enriching content, participation is entirely voluntary. We assume no responsibility for any personal decisions or interpretations made in response to our discussions. Our aim is to foster a community where curiosity, faith, and understanding can flourish. Thank you for joining us on this journey. And for this week's topic, we're doing faith and doubt, which is a really big, important topic. And from what I've seen in the text, faith is very critical when it comes to connecting with God, and any doubt you have will just like mess it up. So yeah, let's just dive in. I don't know who wants to get started on maybe a question or their experience with faith and doubt.
I'll go since I haven't been here for a while. Um, my take on the issue, like just as a general overview, is that faith is perhaps a series of doubts. I think doubt is very important on your journey to faith or in your journey with a faith or a faith tradition. I mean, from my experience, I'm growing up in a religion like in Islam. I had many doubts along the road, you know, and I think it's when you doubt and when you question that you can either find yourself in a position where you turn away, or you find yourself in a position where you become stronger in your faith. But I think for that to happen, you need to first have doubt. So I think doubt is very important. So let's start with how doubt is part of the genesis of faith, I think. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I was thinking on the question of doubt. It's actually it's a gift to have some doubt, actually. It's a proof that we have this capacity for thinking about, for being certain of things or being uncertain of things. It's like an aspect of our soul. It's what would make us different from, say, a cow that doesn't have these concepts, right? And so I think just in and of itself, the idea of doubt is this proof of this higher power that we have of our soul, the human spirit. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess in my kind of experience in my own spiritual journey, I think one of the things is we always have to continue learning and asking questions. Otherwise, we have to keep growing. Otherwise, our faith can die, right? We have to keep asking questions. We have to continue to have an open mind and like continue searching. I felt like when I was in college, I felt that like in a highly intellectual environment, that's when I realized I didn't actually understand what spirituality was at all. That I didn't even, maybe I didn't believe in it. Maybe I didn't think of that there was an unseen realm that we're all kind of in, and that there was even a God, maybe. I had lots of doubts because my understanding was inherited from maybe more of a childlike understanding that I just held on to. And then finally, it was in this intellectual environment, it was kind of torn down or shaken. So then, okay, well, what is real? What is truth? So, start to ask those questions. and that was helpful for me on my journey to be willing to let it all go and just to say, okay, maybe there's nothing. But it kept me on my search because I really wanted there to be something, like, and
Yes,
that's
yes,
where when
yeah.
all those concepts I felt like go away of where you're letting go. To me, the journey of faith is more of like a letting go of notions than necessarily an adding, like adding math or the ability to read into my mind. It's more of a cleansing of my heart, which I didn't, which I'm, a process that I started to learn about after going through a series of doubts.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, Matthew, you didn't say anything, man. I'm
Yes.
surprised.
For me, when I think of like faith and doubt, I actually think of Abraham and Moses in particularly, right? Like they're the prime example of exactly what it is we talk about according to biblical scripture, right? So Abraham was originally known as Abram, which means exalted father. I don't know if anybody knows this, but he became Abraham, which means father of many, father of multitude. As God promised him, I'll make your descendants as many grains of sand as there are in the world. He said something like that. Maybe not those exact words, right? He had a wife named Sarah. So Abraham, on numerous occasions, conveyed faith and doubt, but actually, seemingly in biblical, he conveyed a lot of doubt. On two occasions, according to the Bible, he disowned his wife to protect himself, where he actually kind of pimped his wife out to the Pharaoh, where to protect himself. And as a result of him not trusting God, um, the Pharaoh found out he was married, of course, and he told Abraham leave his land. But when he told Abraham to leave his land, he gave him like all this cattle, all these slaves, servants, let's call them, and all this land. So it seemingly was a blessing at the moment, right? Until you actually look further into the future. So the story about Ishmael and Hagar, I know Muslims obviously see the story differently, but Hagar was actually one of the slaves or servants that actually came from Egypt, according to the Bible, where when Abraham was actually promised a son and Sarah wasn't delivering on it, Sarah was seemingly dry at the moment, and Sarah tells him, "Hey, well, I got this woman right here, this Hagar," and Abraham's like, so he's okay. So Abraham, not trusting God again, has another son, and what happens as a result of this? Obviously, there's a complex family dynamic, dysfunction, jealousy between Hagar and Sarah, because Ishmael was actually the firstborn, and Sarah still couldn't produce. So, as a result of him not trusting in God and doing things his own way, he inherited like a big mess, right? But he also, according to the Bible as well, when God commanded him to sacrifice his son Isaac, he did it he attempted to do it without question. And as a result, that's how God told them, I will reward you with more descendants than there are grains of sand in the world, essentially. So when you don't trust in God, you do things your way, like you end up with worldly results. So when you do things like the world does, you end up with worldly results, right? So that's an example of how Abraham was an example of faith and doubt. Now Moses was another patriarch within the Bible, right? He also faced personal shortcomings before his divine calling. Moses actually committed murder. He killed an Egyptian trying to help a fellow Hebrew, right? And then it caused him to leave Egypt, and then he found his divine calling where God told him, you're going to lead your people out of Egypt. He went back and Of course, you had the plagues, and then the the Red Sea episode, however you believe that. So they're wandering around the desert for 40 years after he led them out of Egypt. Now think about how much these people are complaining, right? Uh, they're hungry. It's hot. They've been wandering around for 40 years. They're probably calling Moses an idiot. Does he really know what he's doing? Um, Complaining left and right. So God commands Moses to strike this rock, not strike this rock, to talk to this rock, and water would come out, right? So, out of frustration with the rebellion of the people, the Israelites, Moses strikes it with his staff, but water still comes out. And what God tells him, as a result of your disobedience, you won't enter the promised land. So Moses ends up on this mountain at the end of his life, and God allowed him to see the promised land, but they were never allowed to enter it as a result. So those are kind of examples, like when I think of this topic, like faith and doubt. And Moses and Abraham, I think, are, according to the Bible and the Torah, I guess we could call it, are like the prime examples of exactly what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the stories you related, of course, related very differently in the Quran, but there is also similarly a theme of doubt. In one example, Abraham says in the Quran, he says to God, he says, "My Lord, show me how do you bring the dead to life?" And then God says to him, he says, "Well, do you not believe?" Because one of the beliefs of God in God is that God brings the dead to life. So God says to Abraham, "Well, then you believe?" He says, "I believe, but just to bring some contentment to my heart." And then God says to him, "I'll chop up these birds, and place them on different hills. And when you call them, they'll come to you." So like that, I bring the dead as a demonstration now. So he was asking for a demonstration, you know. So there is that aspect you see in uh, prophets, where they are pushed to their limits, you know, that they start to want some affirmation or we see it also in the story with Jesus mentioned in the Quran, where the disciples ask him for a table to descend down from heaven, and they say, "Pray to God to do this for us," like as a miracle, and then Jesus says that he can do that, but they should know that if they reject God after this display of this miracle, their punishment will be more severe. Because now they will prove the disciples, of Jesus. So it was because Jesus was given so many miracles, like for example, bringing the dead to life with the permission of God, or healing the blind, and so on. The idea in the Quran is that when you are given that level of proof, if you still reject after that, you know, then there's more wrong with you. Let's put it that way. Because it's the messenger or whatever it has gone out of his way now, to seek this evidence that you requested. So in a way, there's this thing about uh, when you do have doubt, it's almost like a court, right? If you have doubt and it's reasonable doubt, it's as if it can be overlooked. But if God manifested you his signs in such a way, in a sense you were almost chosen. Like for example, if you were the disciple of Jesus, if you lived in Jesus' time and you saw him face to face and you were there, right? And yet you rejected him, that would be now a different. You understand what I'm saying? Different to for someone who wasn't. So there is that kind of layer to doubt also, you know. So we tend to believe that if someone wasn't invited and someone wasn't given a good opportunity to have faith, then they may even be pardoned for not believing, you know, because because how could they have believed? I mean, they had every reason to doubt. So if they doubted them, you understand what I'm saying? So there's that
Yes.
kind of a balance of things, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. There's a verse that says they describe it like a dog that goes back and eats his vomit. Like
Mhm,
once you've seen like what you're talking about.
mhm.
I can't remember the exact verse, and I think Raj could find it for us really quickly. I'm sure,
With
but
AI, huh?
yeah. But it says about it's like a dog that goes back and eats its vomit. Like that's what they describe it as. So
Mhm.
there's similar belief systems. However, like biblically, like Peter, we believe he denied Christ 3 times just to save himself from persecution, right?
Mhm.
And but like even Jesus prophesied that that would happen. So yeah, but definitely faith and doubt I think go hand in hand. I
Mhm.
think you can't have one without the other. I,
Mhm.
personally, I think a little bit of doubt is good. You shouldn't believe everything you're told. You should like be maybe doubt's not the correct word, but you should be have discernment to use your own judgment to go look for yourself or try to find evidence to suggest uh, whatever you're seeking is truth or not. You definitely shouldn't believe what somebody tells you at face value, right? Especially like any of us in particular. So if I'm telling you something, don't look at me like I'm an authority. Go back and Raj does it all the time, man. He goes and chat GPTs it real quick. He's like, hold up. So
So
did you
speaking
find the
of
verse,
which,
Raj?
yeah, it's from Proverbs 26, chapter 26, line 11. Yeah. Um,
Chapter
like a
11. Go ahead.
like a dog that returns to its vomit, it's a fool who repeats their folly. So the
Mhm.
proverb is used metaphorically to illustrate the foolishness of someone who continually returns to their sinful or disruptive behavior, akin to a dog returning to eat its own vomit. Ooh.
So it's kind
So
of like
how
you.
does that relate to the whole question of doubt? I
So it's
don't
kind.
see the connection.
So it's kind of like you said. Once you've seen, I guess what we would call truth, right? And you can
Mhm.
go back, and you could still repeat your sinful nature as if it was before. Yeah, that's to me that's an example of definitely faith and doubt.
Mhm. I think the people that are most frowned on in terms of the way they are described anyway in the Quran, it's not actually the people who doubt. It's the people who know and then persist in their wrongdoing. It's not the people actually who doubt. There tends to be a degree of clemency, a degree of leniency, and even sympathy and empathy, towards doubters, you know, um, because they people who doubt are addressed and engaged with and argued with and discussed with. The whole discourse, in a sense, is to convince people and to clear doubts. That's, I think, the point of scripture in general is to try to convince people and dispel doubts. So it's like mercy for the doubters.
Hmm.
Yeah. So there's that sort of sense. I find, yeah.
I'm interested in your your plural perception or understanding of how one goes from as an individual going from a place of doubt to a place of faith, or basically the process of increasing one's faith. And I don't know if you guys know Plato's cave, the story of Plato's cave. Like, I haven't actually read it, but I can just tell you what it is. It's kind of an interesting story.
Give us an overview.
So you got these people in a cave, and they spent their whole life there, and they're just looking at the cave wall. So you imagine these people in a row, they're looking at the cave wall, and all they see are shadows that are being cast onto the wall. There's a fire behind them, but they've never turned around to actually look and see that there's a fire there. All they see, there's these people just sitting there, and they're seeing these shadows on the wall. One of these people decides to turn around and investigate, and he sees the fire, and then he realizes where the shadows are coming from, but the others have no clue because they haven't seen it. And he tries to talk to them about just turning around, and they say, no, this is our existence, this is it, right? And then so he leaves them, and he goes out, he continues out the cave, and then once he exits the cave, of course, he sees this entire world, trees, sky, everything. And he tries to go back and talk to the people about this. And of course, none of them are willing to change. None of them are willing to go, right? And it's the way I like that analogy, because it's like one is confined to what one knows, and it's hard to imagine that there could be some other like dimension beyond what you're looking at. And yeah, and I just think that's a very interesting process, and I think it's the same in my understanding divine truth. And in my own journey, one of the things is, it's like somehow it's not necessarily about intellectual knowledge; it's about purity of heart. There's something else going on here where the heart is pure, and then can receive some gift, this mystical gift of faith, and then it expresses in our actions. And to go to the Bible, there's this parable of the farmer scattering the seeds. Do you mind if I just read it real quick?
Go for it.
A farmer went out to sow his seed. As soon as he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and some birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 160 or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. And I love this parable because to me, this is the analogy of our hearts and the preparation of our hearts in order to be able to even receive any of this gift of faith. And yeah, so I just like that. I just wonder what your reaction is to that.
I saw something on online the other day, and it was describing kind of that. So it's like when you're going through like a lot in life, right? And you get to a point like everything goes wrong, you lose everything, and like the world like destroys you, and they think they buried you, but they didn't actually bury you, they planted you.
Like that.
So
that analogy. Oh, sorry. Continue, Matthew. I thought.
No, that was good. I was just gonna say sometimes you think when like you're dead and it's over, but you actually you're growing so deep underneath that when you actually spring, you say you'll be 160 times bigger than you were before. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah. That analogy that you mentioned, the parable from the Bible, it reminds me of the prophets. They were told to just it was their job just to deliver the message, right? But in the Quran says that God is the one who guides, because sometimes these prophets, like in Noah, for example, in the Quran, the story goes that he couldn't even save his own son. Because when he told his son to embark on the ark, his son said, "No, I'll climb to the highest mountain." You know? And then finally, when he got to that level and he saw his son there and he said, "Get on the ark," and he said, "No, I'm, gonna do my thing," and he drowned. And then God said, "Well, it's not on you to guide. You can just,
That's it.
you know, give the message,
Mhm.
you know?
Maybe
And
it's the
I think
scattering of
that's
the
part of
seeds,
it.
right?
Exactly. It's the seed analogy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of makes me think that the ecosystem that we have
Mm-hmm.
um, is perfect. I mean, the ecosystem in the world, the ecosystem of people who believe and people who don't believe. I think it's all part of the plan, you know.
Mm.
Because I mean, if anyone were to plead to God to guide someone, a sincere plea, it would be someone that God is speaking to, a prophet, isn't it? I mean, you think, right? And to pray for guidance, okay? And if a prophet wanted to save someone as dear to him as his own son, and he couldn't do that because his son didn't believe what he was saying was true, and we see more
Mm-hmm.
than one example of that. So in a sense, I think it's part of the journey. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's part of the the decree in a sense. And that faith is really, those people who do have faith is really just a gift that they've been given, because you don't really know how you can arrive at faith. Can you? Yeah. Cool.
Isn't there a quote from the Quran, or I don't know if it's Quran or Hadith? Knowledge is a light which God casteth into the heart of whomsoever He will. Have you heard that?
I've heard that. Yes, I believe that's
It's
a
like,
hadith. That's yes.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah. Think that's beautiful. Like that.
Hmm.
It's like, and I remember before, like in my own journey, just thinking about what do they mean by that? The brain is storing information, not the. What do you mean the heart? That doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
So I always, um, yeah, I've evolved through that, and now I'm kind of more heart biased, and
Yeah.
because my brain can do all kinds of things. I can prove God. I can prove God doesn't exist. The reality is like this thing that I just want to keep connected, and I want to
Hmm.
serve my fellow man, and I want to pray, and I want to. It's
Hmm.
like that's what the faith is, and that's what I want to keep going. That's like the,
Hmm.
uh, but it's a different side, right? It's heart. Of course, it should correspond with the mind, and everything should be
Yes.
harmonious. There shouldn't be a conflict, right?
Yes. Yes, because
But yeah,
knowledge, the heart is the seat of knowledge of God.
yeah, yeah. That's it.
And because we are intuitively born with that knowledge. So a child, a baby who has no intellect, who can't express anything intellectually, knows God. You know, it's actually that we are intellectually taught to disassociate from our own hearts, as we
Mm,
grow,
mm,
because naturally we know God. You know,
mm,
I mean, sometimes a kid who's just started out talking, does something weird or says something weird, and you say, "Oh, where did you see that? Or who told you that?" The kid will say, "Oh, God told me that." You know, because
they have
children
pure heart.
have yes, they have a sense of that, and we all have a memory of that in a sense. That's why
Mm,
in Islam also, having faith is characterized by returning to God. Not
mm,
It's not something new. It's not something you don't know. It's something you have to uncover that you already know.
mm.
So there's that kind of sense to it also. Yeah.
Great way of saying it.
Nathan, you mentioned strengthening uh one's faith earlier, and
Mm.
that was one of my questions was what habits can we do or do you guys do to increase your faith? And I guess for me, just to start it off, for me, I do meditation every day, and I'll have Nathan and I actually have these prayer and study sessions going on, and um, just spending that time with Nathan, kind of discussing stuff and just talking through stuff and feeling that like kind of uh, yeah, just enjoying the conversation and just yeah, just getting that feeling of um just I don't know, Nathan, I feel like I'm getting a lot of
Peace.
support from you. So I feel like yeah, I'm just very grateful for having that experience and um that yeah, that's like been one of my that like thanks for doing that with me. That's definitely um kind of a practice for me. And then these discussions are also um like just hearing you guys talk and hearing your different angles and what you find inspiring, um, that is also kind of keeps me in that space of seeking and just feeling more trusting to God, I guess.
Just to piggyback off that, if you don't mind, I I think it's it's mutual, right? When we are having meaningful conversations with each other, we are helping each other grow. So it's completely mutual. In addition, the fact that you're holding these forums is benefiting all of us. We're all talking about things that really matter, and it will help each other in the spirit of respect and I would say love, right? And we're respecting each other. So that is going to conduce to all of our growth. There's one writing from Baha'i, if I might share, that says, "Fellowship with the righteous cleanseth the rust from the heart. Fellowship with the righteous cleanseth the rust from the heart." So I think that's what you get from regularly associating with those that that you respect, that you can have meaningful conversations with, that care about your spiritual growth, and it's mutual. So I think that's one way to increase one's faith. It's who do we surround ourselves with, because and it's a choice we make also.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, there's a saying, I used to attend a university. I graduated in the field of Islamic studies. So I attended like a theology college, right? And one of my lecturers, he always used to say that if you he used to say frequent. He had this funny accent. He was a little bit, was kind of effeminate, to be honest with you. So he used to say, if you frequent the blacksmith, he used to say it like that. It was his favorite saying. Uh, you will stink like smoke, you know. But if you frequent the perfume maker, then you will smell
Mm.
like, fragrance.
Mm-hmm.
So he always used to say that because he used to encourage us the importance of coming to class. So, so and that's kind of what you mentioned, Don. When you in a gathering of where the exchange is mutually beneficial, so you go with something beneficial. But if you go to a gathering where it's on a low vibration and it's just about
Mm-hmm.
hedonism, you go away feeling depressed and you know uh, bad about yourself, agitated. You find it like if you go to places like, for example, If you're a type of person that likes to drink and party, you'll see how it impacts your life, versus if you sit in lecture halls about something you like, because all types of education or pursuing knowledge or pursuing something relevant and beneficial will uplift you in some way, you know. Yeah.
Matt,
One or the other, unless
go
you
for
got
it, Nate.
something want to say anything, Matt.
No, I
I've said
was
like,
letting
oh, go ahead.
I was just letting it sink in.
Oh, okay. And one
So yeah,
aspect of
from my end, you mentioned like what practices would be beneficial, and I think because I tend to come from Sheraj, that was my father, I tend to come from a place where people are very intellectual, like they like arguing, debates, reasoning, and so on. And so for me, I feel that in a weird way, intellectual stimulation and engagement can also be very spiritual, you know,
mm,
and and also increase your faith. It can
mm,
do that, because the fact of the matter is, if faith is true, let's for argument, let's say if faith in God is the right thing to do. Let's say you're not sure it is, right? We should be able to see tangible outcomes to that faith. You know what I mean? I mean, if you want to approach it rationally,
Mm.
so if you ask those questions and you try to uh, introspect on yourself, and the phases in your life, for example, when you had faith and when you didn't have faith, and when you trusted and when you didn't trust, I think you can arrive at some sort of a deeper understanding through reasoning, you know.
mm,
And so I do think that contemplative approach, reasoning, rationality, also
mm,
has and in my estimate, has a very central role to
mm,
faith, rationality, that is, you know. Because otherwise, faith can also lead to delusion. I'm sorry to say that. I
mm,
find a lot of believers to be delusional. I can't help but
mm,
notice that, you know,
mm,
because then there's this notion that faith has to be blind. And
mm,
I don't believe that. I believe faith is seeing, you know?
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I feel like just to piggyback that, it's testable, right? You can say, all right, I'm going to for a month, I'm going to do everything X tradition says I should do, right? And I'm going to trust it. I'm going to go with it, kind of like a scientific experiment. And then I'm going to journal, and I'm going to document the outcomes of this experiment. You can do that, right? The process of jumping in does require a certain trust or faith, that I'm going to actually just do it. Because I think a lot of with faith, it's something to me that needs to be understood from the inside. You can't just be on the outside picking at it, picking it apart. You're never gonna. It's like when you examine. Okay, I could attend this school or that school or that school. You're looking at the schools. You look at the teachers. You look at the outcomes of the students. Okay, and then at a certain point you decide, I'm going to subject myself to the school and become educated by the school. But it still means I have to put the work in. If I
Mhm.
don't learn anything because I didn't put the work in, I can't blame the teacher. I can't blame the school. I didn't do my part. So I like to look at faith in that way. It's like I'm never gonna understand it from the outside. I got to jump into the school, and then I have to
Mhm.
put the work in, and then I'll see the results. But it's not yeah, and it's an ever um whatever, it's an ever continuous journey, right, through the
Mhm.
school, right? The grades don't end,
Yes, exactly.
but there's a
You know,
You don't get
certain
you don't
like
get your black belt
trust.
and then you're done. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You just
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Yeah.
But then one of the to share one other small writing from Baha'i, it says, this is like talking to us. Oh, moving form of dust. That's us. Oh, moving form of dust. I desire communion with thee, but thou wouldst put no trust in me. Right? You don't trust me. So like, and then the sword of your rebellion has felled the tree of your hope. I'm at all times near unto thee, but thou art far from me. So while there's time, return, like you were saying, yes, return and lose not your chance. It's like there's a certain point you have to trust it enough to even join the school. So say I'm an atheist, but some part of me is interested. You just have to give it the benefit of the doubt, trust that there is something, some higher power that works here, and jump in the school and try it out and explore and see for oneself.
Well, let me tell you guys a joke. I told one atheist, I said, look, why don't you just play it safe? I said, look, if I'm wrong and there is no God, right? And you're right, what's the worst that can happen? Or the best that can happen? Nothing, right? I'll be wrong and you'll be right. Okay? But if I'm right, you're screwed. Because you're going to hell. I mean,
right.
It's a joke, but I mean, you get the idea. So I said, like, while you
the rational argument.
yeah, so while you so adamant about being an atheist, maybe you should entertain the doubt, of,
yeah.
that there's a possibility that God does exist and explore it, because if I'm right, so, I mean, you could, so
Yeah.
anyway, I was just,
to add on to like what Nathan was talking about, and you kind of touched on it, point here too, how believers are somewhat sometimes delusional. I know of an individual that was seeking employment, right? And I asked if I could help them with seeking employment, right? So I directed them to this place that's hiring. And immediately this individual asked, well, hey, can you write my resume for me? So no, you could write your own resume, So if you can't write your own resume, why are you going to get this job, Then he asked about a few other people if they could write his resume, and everybody told him the same thing. And then I think finally somebody helped him write a resume, right? Then he asked, hey, can you help me out with like the interview? So I went online to the place this individual was looking for employment, found the questions they were going to ask, gave them the questions, and then he asked, well, what should I say? I said, well, here's the questions right here. Then he tells me, well, I'm just going to pray to God and see what he tells you what to say. Like, God just gave you the answers. God just gave you the questions. God like helped you write this resume. I don't know how much more you want God to do. And it's like you said, Nathan, there's a saying that in Christianity, it's faith without works is dead, right? So you could say, oh, I believe, but sometimes God just wants you to, to put in the effort to get it done. And that's an example of faith, right? Not, God, tell me what to say for this interview so I can get this job. No, here's the questions. Go study them. Find out some answers. Go look on YouTube. We have all these unlimited resources, but instead God will save me. So it's kind of like a cop out sometimes, I guess I would say.
Definitely. Yes, yeah. People use faith as a scapegoat many times. They use God as an object of blame when things go wrong. They use God and faith because they're lazy. There's a lot of, I mean, atheism hasn't become such a global phenomena by itself. The people have suffered a lot of disappointment in religion and with believers. I mean, to be fair, um, where either people have, perpetrated injustices and then ascribed it to God. For example, God willed it. You
Yeah.
know that happens to people. They experience that, and they're like, "So how can I believe in a God who, does these terrible things?" For example, So I mean, I have sympathy for atheists when they become atheists, because you can understand it. At least you can understand the series of events, or the line of questioning, or what led them to that sort of uh, conclusion. It's the wrong conclusion, obviously, I believe, but you can understand it. And I think a lot of it has to do with the believers misusing faith in God, for all kinds of uh, faults of their own, basically projecting it, you know, onto onto the concept of a deity. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm gonna have to drop, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming through,
And
Nathan.
catch you next time.
Thank you. It was nice seeing you again, Nathan. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
A
you
lot of what
too.
you're saying resonates with a lot of the things I've read and over the years in Sufism, in Tasawwuf, in Sufism. Um,
Mm.
yeah, and also because I was the disciple of a Sufi master for over 20 years of my life.
Oh,
So a lot of
really?
this poetry and things you are quoting, it's very familiar. Yeah, it sounds very familiar. Yeah, the concepts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Definitely, Nathan. Well, hopefully
Take
we
care.
can talk again next week, bro.
Yeah, man. Take care.
See you soon.
Take care. You too.
Yeah. Where were we?
Well, something
Yeah.
that
So the issue is, yeah, go for a charge.
yeah, one thing I wanted to bring up because it was interesting was the word confidence. And if you look at the Latin uh, root of the word confidence, there's con and then there's fide, and that means with faith. And so it's just kind of and I think a lot of confidence building comes to repetition. And when you do something over and over again, and
Mhm.
you get more confident in like, when I do this, this will happen kind of thing. And um, yeah, so I think like doing something repeatedly over and over that you get better and better at, that's kind of like another form of faith building. Maybe it's not like faith in God directly per se, but like if you're trying to get good at anything and repeat that thing and you get better and better at it, that's kind of like building your faith in a way in yourself to do something or something like that.
No, that's an interesting concept, man. Because a lot of times we learn things, they say not to touch that hot stove. We put our hand on it, right, and we burn our hand. And we look at another stove. Well, maybe this stove's not hot. Well, and you burn your hand on this stove too. Well, here's another stove. Doesn't look like it's hot. You finally realize just don't touch the stove. Some of them might not be hot. Just don't touch it. Stay away from it. So sometimes we learn through hitting rock bottom and having nowhere to turn but to God, where you have no other option but to trust Him. And I think that's probably a few people experience that.
I think also, Sheraj, what you're saying ties in with renewing of faith or forgetfulness also. because there's the idea that faith fluctuates, so you might have increased faith in God, or you might have less faith. So it's not that you don't believe, like you believe there's God, but you might feel less trusting of God, or feel less, committed to God, and then there's times you feel more committed, to God. And I guess a regular practice, and I think uh, both scriptures, the Bible and the Quran, obviously talks or calls for a regular practice of prayer. you know so a regular practice or consistent practice of connecting with God, helps to be a reminder to you, in a sense, of your purpose, renewing of your commitment. I mean, that's kind of why you have, like, in Christianity, you get the born again Christian, right? That he was baptized. It wasn't that he wasn't Christian all along, you know. There is this kind of a renewal, re-establishing your commitment. Some people do it with marriage, right? Renewing their vows, for example, um, because people, we are weak, we are fickle, you know, our commitments fade with time, we get used to certain things, becomes less. I see it, with myself also. Sometimes I commit to, okay, I'm going to read this much of Quran every day. Okay, I'll do it for the first 10, 15 days, right? Afterwards, I'll be like, oh, I'm in a hurry. Okay, I'll read less, right? After a few more days, I'll skip a day here and there. And I got to catch myself, somewhere further down the line and say, hold on, what happened to, the initial commitment I made to read this much? How did I end up reading this little now, further down the line? Because this is human nature, right? We become complacent in with everything, even things we enjoy doing. You know, even if you're a fighter, or you like running or whatever, you get lazy, right? You start out really enthusiastic. Yes, I'm gonna run. I'm training hard. Few days, or a month or 2 months close to the race or the marathon, you think, you know what? I can skip today. It's okay. I know I'm supposed to run today. I always run on a Wednesday. It's a Wednesday, but guess what? I'll do it on Thursday. Thursday comes, you say, you know what? What the hell? I'm gonna make it anyway. You know, race day comes, and you start running, and you 2 hours into the race, and you're like, damn, I should have trained more. It's just it's like that with religion too. So yeah.
That's cool though that in Islam you do the 5 prayers a day, and that kind of like keeps that renewal going over and over. And it's also cool, like I was just thinking, like when they do the call out for the prayer in like
Hmm.
a Muslim town or something, then it's kind of like on everyone's
Hmm.
radar that okay, we're all going out. It's a very collective action that happens, which is yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that call to prayer really does encourage you to pray, because I mean, for myself, I mean, I prayed 5 times a day all my life. But I mean, there are times where I feel lazy and I don't feel like praying, but then the call to prayer goes, and I'm like, I feel bad. I'm like, I felt lazy and I didn't really want to pray, but now the call to prayer went, and how am I gonna feel if I don't pray? You know what I mean? This guy just got out of his bed to walk to the mosque to shout the call to prayer to remind me that I gotta get up and pray. So, you know, yeah.
Do,
Yeah,
do,
that's
do
cool.
does
That's great.
anybody think? Does anybody think like not being faithful or not being obedient in your faith, let's call it, can lead to, like I was describing Abraham and Moses, can lead to unwarranted consequences you may not have been prepared for?
I would
I th-
venture to
yes,
get, yeah.
yes, definitely, definitely, and also, but even being obedient can lead to unwarranted consequences. I think life hands you unwarranted consequences you're not prepared for. You know.
That's true.
Maybe I used the word unwarranted. I shouldn't have used that word. Consequences that weren't sanctioned by God, let's say. So sometimes, like I talked about, Abraham telling the Pharaoh his wife was his sister, right? Just so they wouldn't kill him to take his wife or whatever. And Pharaoh ends up sleeping with her, and then he gives Abraham this land, cattle, servants. And if you actually read into the Bible later, you could see the consequences because this action was not sanctioned by God. It was Abraham acting on his own accord. Like you could see in the lineage down the line, according to the Bible, that how much dysfunction it caused, how much damage it actually caused for the entire generation all the way down, generations and generations all the way down. But yet God still remained faithful in his promise to Abraham.
I think, Matthew, I think the issue is very complex when it comes to outcomes. And I'll tell you why. Because God is all powerful and almighty, right? Between every action, there is the power of God and then the result of the action. So even a bad action can have a good result if God intended it. And even a good action can have a bad result if God intended it. Understand? So I think the most we can account for, or the most we can sort of attribute something to, um, insofar as judging it as good and bad, is the action itself and not the result of the action. And I'll give you an example. Let's say someone has a bastard son. Okay, is it the son's fault that he's a bastard? No, right? The son may actually grow up to be something amazing, right? The Jews think. I mean, I don't even want to say what they think, but I mean, they believe, of course, that about Jesus, right? I mean, we don't believe it because we believe Jesus, uh, Mary was pure and chaste, and Jesus was immaculately conceived. But of course, the Jews say he's a bastard. Understand? But even if what they claim were true, and God forbid, of course, it's not true, look at amazing results that came out of Jesus's prophethood. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I think we're saying the same exact thing. I'm just not explaining it well. You're describing exactly what I'm thinking. Regardless of the circumstance, regardless of the action you committed, God will still use it to advance his kingdom, right? To advance his agenda, to advance his will. Like he could turn any negative situation into something that definitely um, advances what it is he wants to accomplish. I do, however, believe that sometimes your consequences were not what God originally had intended for you. So you have to deal with those consequences because you decided to do things your way versus being obedient to God. But God will still bless you in a manner that will advance his agenda, right? So I guess what I'm saying, faith isn't like the absence of doubt. Like it's not it's our resolve just to follow God's instruction despite our imperfections. our flaws, our disobedience. Like, and
Mhm.
when you fall, don't don't be hard on yourself. Especially when I go back and I read like Old Testament, like Abraham. If you like reality shows, man, go back and read the Old Testament, man. That's some real reality shows there. If you like them drama, desperate housewives of Saudi Arabia type stuff, no, they don't have nothing like that there, man. Absolutely, they got desperate them housewives that be arguing, them celebrity housewives, and they sleep with each other's husbands. If you like that, all that stuff is in the Old Testament. But God still used those people to advance, well, to fulfill His promise to Abraham. Even though Abraham was disobedient, God still fulfilled His promise because if God says it, He means it.
Mhm.
I guess not
Yeah,
really.
yeah. So I guess, yeah. So then we basically saying the same thing. Um, I think the outcomes are always just in the hands of God, regardless of what anyone does, because no one can frustrate God's plan, essentially, good or bad. Yeah.
I, I,
I
I
mean, whether they deem themselves as good or deem themselves as bad. Yeah.
yeah. I think of situations like this. I know of people that put so much emphasis on a career, right? Instead of relying on God to give them direction, they relied on themselves to give them direction. So they worked all this overtime, worked really hard to move up the corporate ladder. They get to the top and end up divorced, losing their family, losing relationships with their kids because it's not what God intended for them to begin with. You know, um, that's what I think. Like consequences like that, when you do things and God did not have that intended for you to begin with, He'll still. I mean, he can still heal a broken family, right? He can still uh,
Mm.
uh, kids that grew up fatherless, things of that nature, can definitely still become really
Mm.
important in the kingdom of God. But I think as an individual, like if you're being disobedient and not following His direction and trying to do things your way versus seeking direction, there's consequences that come with it sometimes that you may not be
Yes, yes.
willing to.
I understand. I think we crossing two words that you saying. One is you using the word intend, and then the other thing is you saying follow his direction, so what he orders. And I think these are two different things. Like what God orders, so you mean when people don't follow the laws of God, they will suffer ill consequences simply through disobedience, right? I mean, for example, if you have a bunch of loose children all over the place, it's gonna be there's gonna be consequences for that, as opposed to someone who was God fearing and took care of and married, for example, the woman he wanted. y- because it's different, right? So the one is obeying the command or the law of God, and the other one isn't. And of course, the one who's obeying the law of God will fare better than the one who isn't, you know? And that's in the realm of obedience and submission to what God has ordered, right? And then there's the other thing, which is sort of like the cosmic plan, which I don't think we can account for really, and how God is going to utilize the chaos, right, and still bring order. That's
Mm,
something again, that's like another level, and I think that's the other dimension of it. I think those are two things. They work together, but they're not the same thing. I don't even know what I mean. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I think another interesting thing that came to mind was how when you do get like some sort of negative consequences from your actions, or even just random things that happen to you that isn't not comfortable or not good, it's like it's a little tricky to do sometimes, but it helps to thank God for things even when bad things happen, because it's actually those bad things are actually his mercy, because it could, I don't know, like there's things can always get infinitely
It could have
worse.
been worse.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah.
According to the scripture, it tells God disciplines those that He loves, right? So if you're getting, you know, you're behind whooped by God, it's actually because He loves you. It's like as a father, right? Uh, Mohammad, obviously you're a father, and Raj, not yet. Let's speak that into existence. Not yet, you know. One day, maybe one day. But if you love your kids, right, you're gonna discipline them. And sometimes it's hard. No, nobody wants to just whoop their kids, right? Nobody wants to just spank your kids for nothing, you know. So it really does bother you sometimes when you have to, you know, you see your little child and you have to like spank them. But if you don't, they grow up to be assholes and end up being like, you know, unproductive citizens. End up living in your house till they're 50, or you support them your whole life. They don't become productive people. They can't sustain in any type of relationships because you taught them to be selfish. You know, there's.
I kind of doubt
Yeah,
whether
you know,
that's
I
but
beat Sheraj up. I beat Sheraj up so much as a kid. That's why he's so productive today.
yeah, I don't think there's like scientific. I think the science like says that hitting
Correlation,
your
yeah.
kids isn't the best thing, but I'm just gonna throw that out there.
I don't know, man. Bible describes it as nothing more biblical than disciplining your kids, man.
Yeah,
Uh,
but that doesn't mean smacking them.
no, no. So there's a difference, okay?
Yeah.
There's some things that are you don't just smack your kid for. You know, you got to have a level of discernment, obviously, as a parent, right? You can't just hit your kid for no reason. I can't come home from work because I'm frustrated and throw the steak at the wall and beat my kids because I'm frustrated. You know, like if you tell your kid repeatedly over and over and over, and they're not listening, yeah, sorry, man, it's time to get that belt out. And in my house, my kids get ass whoopings thrice daily. We say just for good measure. Just for good measure. If you didn't do anything, well, just this is for something you're going to do in the future. And I think you could definitely see. I can within the workplace now for this younger generation versus like our generation. I would say they definitely didn't get beat, and as kids, I'm not saying just beating your kids all the time is healthy, but definitely there's a, a balance that's healthy. But yeah, they can't handle like certain circumstances because they're I don't know how to explain it. I don't want to bash this generation because this is about faith and doubt, and we can get back on that.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
A story I kind of wanted to bring
Well,
up
you
from
know,
the
my kids, some of my kids are big now, so I throw them a set of boxing gloves. You know,
Yeah.
like let's
Well,
go for it.
Like, all right,
well
let's get
by
it
the
out.
time they're
Dukes up, kiddo.
well, by the time they're a certain age, like just spanking them doesn't help anymore, man. Like if they're a
Yeah.
teenager, once they're 15, if they don't know right from wrong, they're not going to, and life's
Mhm,
gonna be difficult.
mhm. Yeah.
So one of the
Well, you know, life also has a way of beating you down, and some people learn from that. You know. Yeah.
Yep, and that's how a lot of people have to learn, unfortunately. Sorry,
Some
Raj. Go
people
ahead, man.
no,
unfortunately
there's a
don't
lot of,
learn,
yeah,
and then
for sure. Life beats me down all the time, and I'm
it's,
like, oh man, maybe I'm not the hot shit I thought I was.
yeah, no, yeah, me too. You know. I mean, I get my ass whooped in real life all the time. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Um, one of the stories I wanted to bring up was Matthew 17, where Jesus and three of his disciples, Peter, James, and John, had just come down from the mountain where the transfiguration had occurred. They encountered a crowd, and a man approached Jesus, kneeling before him, and asked him to heal his son who was suffering from seizures. The man had previously brought his son to the disciples, but they were unable to heal him. Jesus responded with frustration about the lack of faith among the people, and then proceeded to heal the boy. So that's the summary. But I was surprised from reading these verses, like, man, Jesus he sounded pretty frustrated from the verses here. So so this is from Matthew 17, chapter 24, or yeah. Uh, when they came to the crowd, a man approached Jesus and knelt before him. Lord, have mercy on my son, he said. He has seizures and is suffering greatly. He often falls into fire or into the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they cannot heal him. You unbelieving and perverse generation, Jesus replied, how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me. Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of the boy, and he was healed at that moment. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private and asked, why couldn't we drive it out? He replied, because you have so little faith. Truly, I tell you, if you have faith as small
Mustard
as a
seed.
mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. So that I was actually surprised to see Jesus talk like that, but I think that kind of goes a little back to your point, Yassine, about when you're shown like all these things and you're given so much proof and you still don't have that faith, like maybe there's more of a punishment or something like that. And yeah, it seemed Jesus was a little upset at his disciples for this whole thing.
Yeah, he definitely got upset numerous times. He was not
Yeah.
just this soft-spoken, man. He was everything in between and one extreme to the other. He was exactly who he needed to be at any given moment. But yeah, definitely having the faith of a mustard seed. So what about that? What about that? Do you think there's bounds to your faith? Do you guys think there's bounds to your faith?
Yeah, I definitely think that faith is well, not quantifiable, but that it comes in various quantities. Let's put it that way. There is such a thing as having, little faith, and having a lot of faith. I mean, I don't think we can quantify it, but there's some measure, to it, I believe. Yeah.
There's something interesting here
So
about having like a little, like, because he says faith as small as a mustard seed, which is pretty small, but even that
Hmm.
small amount of faith can do these things like move mountains,
Big things.
big things. And
Hmm.
I think that kind of speaks to the idea of faith not really being um like quantify, or you can't like you can't really have just a little bit of faith, because if there is that little bit of faith, then it kind of opens it up to everything kind of
Hmm.
being like the faith being there for everything. Just um
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know, because I think it doesn't really have those boundaries like an actual mustard seed. Uh,
Hmm.
because if you think about like the mustard seed through time, like the mustard seed grows and then more mustard seeds grow from that. So, yeah, maybe it's a time bound thing. I don't know.
No, I think there's a sense of nurturing when we talk about faith. So faith is like a seed, but then you gotta water that seed and look after that plant for it to keep growing. So I think there's that sense behind faith. So yeah, sure, the seed, but it's gotta be nurtured and watered and looked after. Otherwise, you'll wake up one day and realize you don't have faith. You know. So
Face shriveled up and
because
died.
it's an on yes, because your faith shriveled up and died. Yes, exactly. I think there's that sense. That's how my sense of faith and also my experience of faith, you know. I mean, there are times in life where you have more faith, and the times where you wonder uh, if you do have faith, in fact, you know, because you know, life is up and down. It's a journey, right? So yeah,
Yeah, there's definitely the moments where you feel a lot stronger in your foundation than others, and it's usually like a little ground shaking event that makes you stronger again. What I find is when I steer too far away, it's usually because I got it too good. Like things are going too well that I don't really appreciate the moment. So guys like, well, let me drag you through this shit again, and you'll appreciate this when you get back here again, you know. And you're like, oh, okay. So
yeah, that's very true. That's very true. One of the I find the big destroyers of faith is ingratitude, and the door to ingratitude is comfort. Unfortunately, you know, when you're too comfortable, you become ungrateful quite easily. You know, because it's very easy for you to expect your new comfort very quickly becomes normal, you know, and then you very easily become miserable even in opulence because the opulence is now normal for you, you know. You know, I went home and my kids were not able to swim in the swimming pool because the creepy crawly is that thing that cleans the pool, you know, it stopped working, you know. And they were saying, you know, how they couldn't swim, blah, 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 you know. And I was like, well, y'all didn't have a pool before, you know. So,
mm, yeah.
give you you know, that's how it is, you know. So, I mean,
Uh,
you know,
when I
there shouldn't be a complaint that you can't swim, you know. This is not a real complaint, but,
at,
you
at
know,
at my house in the wintertime, I keep the temperature just at room temperature at 68 degrees, right? But the winters here can get really harsh, where sometimes that wind really cuts through the house and it like gets cold. So people start telling me how cold it is in my house. I tell them, well, go stand outside for 20 minutes and come back in, and we'll see how cold it is, you know?
yeah, exactly. And then that's just one of the ways in which you can maintain your own level of gratitude is by voluntarily depriving yourself on occasion, you know, from things you used to. That's what I do. That's my practice. That's my habitual practice. So I'll
Mm,
give you an example. It's very hot here where I live, and so now and again I'll buy myself a, you know, whatever like drink I want to get when I'm taking a walk, right? And once I feel like I've done that too often enough, and I gotten used to it, I'll just stop doing it for a while because otherwise it gets old. You know, you just don't enjoy it that much anymore. You know, it's how we designed. So I practice like voluntary deprivation on occasion. You know, sometimes I'll just take a cold shower instead of a hot one. You know, sometimes I'll sleep on the floor instead of the bed. You know, you gotta just teach yourself to just be able to say thank you. You know, because it just doesn't come naturally, unfortunately. You know.
so
Yeah.
my wife, she gets really frustrated with me, like when I got like body pains, and as I'm getting older, I get more and more of them. Knees hurt, joints hurt, sciatica flares up. There's just countless things that go on, but I refuse to like take any type of like pain medication, or when I'm sick, I refuse to take any type of medication that like reduces the symptoms unless it's really, really, really bad. And
I'm
number
the same.
one,
I'm the same.
yeah, number one, because I don't want to get used to taking them and not being able to tolerate it. But number two, like, yeah, like when I don't feel the pain, I feel that much, or don't feel sick. I appreciate it that much more. If you were sick for 2 weeks and all of a sudden you're healthy, and you were like coughing, your chest hurt, you could barely sleep, and then you're healthy, like you'll feel like grateful that you're not sick anymore.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm sick, like I'll be like, oh man, I wish I was more like enjoyed being healthy a little more because you do take it for
Yeah,
granted.
Well, yeah.
yeah, definitely,
Well,
definitely, yeah.
I had this car. I drove for work for like a year and a half, right? Car had no heat. Okay, and I'm talking about sometimes it would be like negative 35 degrees Fahrenheit, and I have to get in that car and drive to work. So the stereo didn't work, the heat didn't work. So when I finally got, after driving it for like a year and a half, when I actually sucked it up because I didn't want to get another car payment or anything, like when I finally got a car for myself that has heat, air conditioning, and you don't know how good that
Decent
felt.
car, yeah.
Yeah, you don't know how good that felt, man. Most people are like, oh, big deal. It's just this, I'm like, no, bro. I just drove to work for a year and a half with no heat, and in the wintertime, your windows are iced up. Like they don't defrost. Like, you know.
Good. I'll tell you what I'm thankful for. I went to South Africa, right? And the government is really bad now. And for like 8 days or 7 days that I was there, the water was off. The water was off. Now, at my one house, we have a water tank, and then the water tank ran out. Okay. And I was busy fixing the other house. So every night when I came home, I would take a swim at like 10 p.m. at night in the ice cold because I don't want to go sleep full of paint and like I've been doing like construction work, cement and so I was like standing outside freezing, in the pool, swimming in the pool. Um, and then finally, when I got back to my apartment in Arabia, right, the first thing I did was I opened the hot shower. I was like, wow, first world amenities, amazing, you know, because things are really bad now in South Africa. Yeah.
So no,
It's,
this is good. I mean, I was thinking when Raj asked like, how do you increase your faith, and you kind of hit it on the head, is like depriving yourself of things that you don't really appreciate anymore. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna work on that.
Yeah. One way to do it, like our Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, what he used to do was he used to fast regularly. So we would say one day I fast and one day I eat, so that the day that I eat, I'm grateful for food, you know, and then one day I'm grateful for the feeling of hunger, you know. So there's, I mean, there's many things you can do, but that's one thing you can do. What I tend to do in my life is I don't eat breakfast. So I'll have coffee in the morning and then I'll eat once I get hungry, which would be in the afternoon, you know? So not once I get hungry, I'll feel hungry the whole time. And then when I eat, by the time I eat, uh, it feels so much better to eat because you are hungry. You were enduring the hunger for a period of time, you know?
During Ramadan, how does that work for you?
Well, in Ramadan, the fast starts with just before the sun rises, right? So usually people eat a meal before while it's still dark in the morning, and then they have to not eat the whole day or drink or anything. It's a dry fast
Wow.
until the evening when the sun sets, and then they eat again. So that's
Is
like
that
fasting.
and
Yeah,
that what month is that?
that's a month of Ramadan. That's like 30 days. The lunar calendar doesn't work the same as the solar calendar, so it doesn't coincide exactly the same time every year.
Ah,
It shifts around for about 10 days, 10,
okay.
11 days. Yeah. So it's like, for example, when you have Easter, it doesn't always fall on the same day because it's following another calendar. Like that, the lunar calendar doesn't always fall in line with the Gregorian
Gregorian.
calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Prophet, what he used to do, he used to fast, that fast, the Islamic fast, he used to do it regularly every week, like 2 days in the week, like on a Monday and a Thursday, and then the middle 3 days of the month he'd do it, like the 14th, 15th, and 16th he'd fast, and then every Monday and Thursday he'd fast. That was his practice. He used to fast the whole year. But the rest of the Muslims were only required to fast 1 month of the year. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I could fast the whole year, bro.
Yeah, so he used to fast. Well, it wasn't every day the whole year, but it was those days. So how many days would that work out to? 2, 4, 6, 8, that's 3 days. So you could say 11 days of the month he'd fast every month. Yeah. That was kind of his balancing act, this between gratitude and being satisfied. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess in a nutshell, when we're fat and happy, it's like one of the worst times that we could become really complacent, right? So we did one on fasting and praying. What was that? How many weeks ago was that, Raj? Maybe 2-3 weeks ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of ties hand in hand with exactly what we're talking about. So the importance of fasting and praying will actually help increase your faith, right?
Yes, exactly.
It puts you in alignment. It puts you in that position that you have an attitude of gratitude, that you're just grateful to be for the things you have, rather than you having excess and not really appreciating.
I like the way you said an attitude of gratitude. It sounds like straight out of a rap,
Yeah. No, I had a pastor.
That should be like a slogan,
Yeah, I had a pastor who used to say sayings like that all the time. He had really clever sayings like that all the time. Attitude of gratitude. I'm too grateful to be hateful.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
I'm too anointed to be. I'm too anointed to be disappointed. Too blessed to be stressed.
Well, that's good. That's cool. Yeah.
Gotta make a song.
Yeah, that's tight. Yeah.
Oh, Roz will drop an NFT.
Sheraj, I see a beat coming on. Sheraj's gonna put a beat behind that. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Maybe for the next
Guys,
next
I
week we'll
really
have
have
that.
to go. Actually, I actually just I hear the call to prayer going, so I gotta bounce. Yeah.
Time to increase that faith.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. See you guys. Keep up.
All right, see you.
All right, man. It was good talking to you, Mohammad, man. Hopefully we can see you next week.
Okay. Inshallah.
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 That's how you say it? All right.
All right. Well, shall we close it out with the prayer mat?
Yeah, you can close it out, Raj, man. I'll let you take this week, Raj.
All right, let's do it. Thank you, God, for your greatness and your ineffability. And thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for the viewers who are watching this, and may everyone who participated and are watching this right now be blessed. And I hope you're doing well. Thank you, God.
All good, Raj. Yeah, good talk, man.
Yeah, sounds good. And let's try and do that song, huh? I'll send you a beat,
We'll
and
drop
then
an
you can
NFT.
rap. You can rap to it. What do you think?
All right. You're gonna send me an AI beat, and then
No, this will be
Or do you actually
straight
do
from the
beats?
dome, man. Just boom, boom, boom with my
Oh no, I
fingers.
forgot. You actually are a musician, Raj. That's right. Okay, yeah. I just forget. You're a man of many hats. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Master of none.
That's all of us. All right, Raj, man. We'll definitely reconvene again
All right, sounds good. Peace.
later.